Hello Internet! I have heard a lot of questions about partitioning, how to create partitions, move partitions, resize partitions, etc. So in this video I'm going to go over all of these and going to drop in a lot of details which might help you partitioning your hard drive. This video is applicable for both Linux and Windows. I don't think it is 100% applicable to Mac, and I honestly don't know enough about Mac to point out the details which differ, so only use this video for Windows and for Linux. You can of course use it for a system which has both of them. You can use it for external hard drive, etc. So let's get started. The very first thing you need to do is to make a full backup, because if the power goes out, you might lose data, especially if you're not working on a laptop. If the power goes out, you're probably going to lose data, so have a backup. And don't just back your data up. Click on the link in the video description where I'm showing you how to make a full image backup of your hard drive so you can easily get back to the state which you had before. So let's get started with actually partitioning. First thing you need to do is to get a Linux live distro on a thumb drive and boot from it. So open up your favorite web browser, go to ubuntu.com and then click on desktop, then on download Ubuntu, and what you want is the newest version of Ubuntu that starts with an even number and then has 04. These are the long-term support versions, so this is the version 2016, the 4th month. And just click on the download button, download it, put it on a thumb drive. How exactly you put it on a thumb drive depends on your system, which utilities you have installed, but you can probably find these easily online, and ubuntu.com even shows you how they work for Linux, Windows, Mac. So then pop in your thumb drive and just restart your computer. While this is booting up, the reason we use a live system is that you don't want to change your partitions while they are in use. This is somewhere between impossible and dangerous. I think I'll explain to you a few details. So once it booted up, you'll see try Ubuntu and install Ubuntu. Just click try Ubuntu. Going to take a few more seconds. Once you see the Ubuntu desktop, just close this, click the symbol and enter Gparted. This is a partition editor and just click it to open it. So the first thing you need to do is to select the correct hard drive. You can do this over here, and in this case I only have SDA and SDB. You can use the size to find out which one you want. You can also click on them and see the partition layout. You probably have some names here so you can easily find out if you're on the correct hard drive. Once you determine the correct hard drive, what you want to do is, if you're using a Linux swap partition, you won't have any of these if you're using Windows, but if you use Linux, you might have some of them. Just click them and press swap off. This should make all the key symbols go away. If you did anything prior to this, for example, if you went into Nautilus, and if we close this, we can see this drive right here. If you mounted it and then go and Gparted, you will again see a key. So we want to make this go away, so right click it, press unmount so that there are no keys. Once you did this, you want to find out what kind of partition table you're using. So for this, click on view and then device information. What you will see is either MS-DOS or GPT. And this is important because if you're using MS-DOS, you can only have 4 primary partitions. If you use GPT, you can have many primary partitions. It depends on a few factors, but it's enough. You will not run out of partitions. On the other hand, if you use MS-DOS, you can only have 4 primary partitions. Now, what are primary partitions? Primary partitions are all of them which have a 1 through 4. So so SDA1, SDA2, SDA3, SDA4, or whatever other descriptor here is. So might be like SDC or something. And the numbers greater than 4 must be logical partitions. So to have a logical partition, you need an extended partition. You can only have one extended partition, and having an extended partition will cost you one primary partition. So you can have 3 primary partitions and then an extended one, and in that one you can have a number of other partitions called logical partitions. Now you can have like a dozen at least. The exact number depends on stuff, but you probably don't want any more than you can have. So this is relevant if you want to create new partitions, but you usually have all of your space used up. So the first thing you need to do is to decrease the size of a partition. Let's just make this go away. You already remembered the one important information you can find here. So make this go away. Then we want to decrease the size of this one, because you probably have one partition which takes up virtually all space on your hard drive. And what you want to do probably is you want to decrease this partition from the right to the left. Now the reason you probably want to do this is that decreasing sizes of partitions from the right to the left is usually very fast, whereas decreasing a partition size from the left to the right takes a long time. The reason for this is that if you do this, it can just basically cut it off. There will probably be no or only little data on the far right of this partition, whereas a lot of data is stored on the left. By the way, this little yellowish part of the strip only indicates how much data is used compared to how much data you can possibly store on the partition. It doesn't actually say that the data is stored here on the left. It can be anywhere, but it's usually on the left. So this will take a long time because it has to copy all the data that's here to here, whereas if you move the right end, it doesn't have to change much. So this is fast. So first things first, decrease the size of this partition. You can either drag and drop this, or you can just enter the number here. So let's say you want to have about 50 gigabytes, and we can just type in that number and then it'll adapt to it. So then press resize move and it'll be queued. You don't have to apply this yet. You can apply it via this icon, but you can also just keep on queuing up stuff and then in the end apply all operations, so you don't have to always wait 10 minutes or wait 2 hours and then do the next thing. Just add them to the queue and then in the end do everything. But to show you that this is really quick, I'm going to apply this now. Press apply again and it'll apply it in just like 10 seconds or something. Whereas if you moved it from the left, it would have taken a very long time, possibly hours. So it actually took a lot longer to apply. It took about 1.5 minutes. This can happen, but it usually doesn't. So now we can move on to creating a new partition in this newly unallocated space. What you should consider when you do it like this is that if you use an HDD, this part is slower to access than this part, because this part, the further left it is, the more on the outside of the disk it is. The more to the right it is, the more to the inner side of the disk it is. So for an SSD this doesn't matter, there obviously is no disk in an SSD, but if you use an HDD or if you use a hybrid drive, you want to consider this. So if you're going to install a new operating system, you might want to take the time to repartition by shrinking partitions from the left to the right, even though it takes a lot longer, because it'll save you time when you actually run the system, because it's going to be faster. So we now want to create a new partition. if we want, for example, a data partition having on the right is perfectly acceptable. So just right click this unallocated space here, or right click the unallocated space here and then press new. This will prompt you to enter a few details about your new partition. For example, you want here a primary partition. Now you can't have anything else because we're not in the extended partition and we already have an extended partition, so you neither can have a logical one nor another extended one because you can only have one extended partition, so you can only have a primary partition. So this is selected. Now the next thing you want to decide on is the file system. And you can have any one of these, any one that's not grayed out. By the way, if you want to check which operations you can do, you can go to View and then File System Support, and everything that has at least one check mark is supported, everything else is not. And what you're probably most interested in, if you're a Linux user, is the ext4 file system. This is this one here. You might also be interested in ext3, probably not ext2 anymore, but these are all fully supported. And what you're probably most interested in if you're a Windows user is NTFS, also fully supported. If you're a Linux user, you're probably also slightly interested in Linux swap partitions, and if you're partitioning a thumb drive, you're most interested in FAT32 and NTFS again. You can access NTFS partitions from a Linux system, you can access FAT partitions from a Linux system, and of course ext4, etc. But you cannot access ext3 or ext4 or even ext2 from a Windows system without having installed special software, which probably won't exactly work well. So stick to NTFS if you need Windows support. Okay, having said that, and okay, actually one more thing. The reason you might want to use FAT32 is if you want to attach your thumb drive to like a TV or something that doesn't support NTFS. Okay, so close this. Now decide on your partition type. Let's say you want an NTFS partition for a Windows system. So select this. You can also enter a label. Let's say just Windows D. And then decide on the size. You can adjust this freely. It'll all work in very little time. So let's just say we want to do it like this. We want about 10 GB preceding and about a 4 GB partition. Then simply click on Add. You might also apply it right away. So press Apply and have it done. Now let's say we want another partition. Right here, let's make a new one and we want a, let's say, ext4 partition. We can also add this one, again apply, and it's already done. Now, if you have a layout like this, you cannot, if you're using an MS-DOS file table, add any more partitions, because if we count up, we already have SDA1, SDA2, SDA3 and SDA4. So we cannot have any more of these, but we can have more extended partitions. Now, to have another partition, we need space in this extended partition. You cannot have like a little bit of space up the front and create a new partition over there. You need to actually have it in the extended partition. So let's say we want to sacrifice space of the very first partition and add it to our extended partition. What you have to do this is to shrink the first one, then move all the ones to the right, further up the left, so we can have some space which touches the extended partition. So let's make this one a bit smaller, resize or move, then resize or move this one, just move it all the way to the left. Yeah, this is a warning which usually doesn't apply anymore. I think it didn't even apply for Windows XP, doesn't apply for any Linux system I'm aware of. Just press OK. Resize and move this one, you'll probably get, yeah, again, same warning. Then we have free space touching the extended partition. So right click the extended partition, resize, move, and now actually resize it. Now that we have resized the extended partition, we have unallocated space within the extended partition. You can see this both up here, where we have a gray area within the color of the extended partition, and also down here, where within this extended partition part, we have unallocated space. So you can now right click this and create a new partition here. Just click add and you're done. Now this is probably going to take some time, so let's just cancel it because I want to be done sometime. Of course, never cancel it if you're actually on a productive system where you might lose data. Just let it go through and see what you can do afterwards. Now we're back to this state, and let's say you want to delete a partition. What you probably want to do first is to save all your data you have of this partition to some other disk, but then if you have saved all your data, you can just right click it and delete it. Do this. Now you got a bit of unallocated space. Of course, what you can do now is to add this space to some existing partition. Adding it to this partition is very fast because you can just expand it to the right. This will go in virtually no time. But if you want to add it to this partition, the thing to keep in mind again is that for this partition, this is an operation to the left because the unallocated space is on the left. So if you do it like this, this will actually take more time. I hope this was informative for you. If you have any further questions, just leave them as comments. Okay, bye.